To be able to determine if an athlete is getting ready for an injury, see, this can be determined very easily. Here we have a baseball player, and he's going to be throwing. He's not a pitcher, just a regular player. So we see the stride, gets his weight forward, which is good. But see, he's leading with the shoulders already, but his hips are still lagging. This is a very common error. And I go back to the youth leagues where when they teach somebody how to throw a ball, the very first thing they do is put a ball in their hand, say, here's how you grip it, you bring the ball back, and then you throw. There's your throw. And if you don't believe me, watch some of these little league games. Watch some of the coaches when they teach them the first time out. Where's the body? Use the body. See, this is what I harp on all the time. If you use the body to create the power, you use the arm actions for accuracy. So that puts a lot less stress on the elbow, shoulder, and arm. But here we see the elbow, the shoulders leading. So that we know that's going to be creating some problems. So he's coming around, shoulders all the way around, the hips are still lagging. The hips should have been way out in front. Now one thing he does nicely as he comes around, cocks his arm, ready for the throw. That's very good. But let's take a look at the next frame, what happens. See, now he drops the hand out to the side. So usually from that cocked position, we use medial rotation and the hand comes up. This is why it's called an overhead throw. But instead of the overhead, we see him coming out to the side. So after one more frame, we can see it's more of a sidearm throw rather than an overhead throw. And this is where they run into troubles. They're combining an overhead with a sidearm. If it's overhead, got to be overhead. Sidearm, got to be sidearm. Then you would change things quite a bit if it's sidearm. This would be poor technique for sidearm. But let's go back again. So from this position, we see the full straightening of the arm. So all of the forces from back here are being thrown out to the side. Not toward the ball, not toward the batter. Or if he was a pitcher, or toward the other person, it's being thrown out to the side. And if you take a look with the hand over here, on the release with this position, you can only create side spin. So that ball is going to be breaking left or right. You don't want this when you're throwing to a partner or someone else. You want the ball to come on a straight line, so it should have backspin on it, not side spin. And he's limited in terms of the kinds of pitches he's capable of throwing with this technique. So he's going to be very limited in his abilities. So if we go even a little further, see, finally we get that hand pronation or the medial rotation occurring, but it's way into the follow-through instead of occurring early. But okay, those were some of the big things, see, but they would tell me, okay, what am I going to do with this athlete? First thing we would do is teach him how to use his body, how to get the hips into it, how to get the hips in early, how to rotate the hips, and then the shoulder rotation. And then we would work on the arm action. Change that arm. So he's actually throwing overhead and not sidearm, which is very limited. So that's how this would set up the training program for him. Okay, here he is getting ready to throw. Comes around. You can see the shoulders starting to come around and the hips are kind of following the shoulders. He's starting off cocking the arm. See, this would be good if he kept this position of the elbow and came through, where he just rotated the upper arm. This is what is considered good technique for overhand throwing. But instead, see what he does? Throws it out to the side, and we get that full arm extension out to the side. This is what I call a slinging action out to the side, and this is what I believe is causing so many elbow problems and many Tommy John surgeries today. It's a completely different technique from what players used to use years ago. Not that they didn't use a sidearm, but it was kind of rare, and mainly only for some infielders. All right, let me take a few minutes to talk about injuries in sports. Somehow, Injuries in sport has come to be an accepted thing. Of course you're going to get an injury sometime or another. If you play sports, you will get injured. This is a myth. There is no need for these injuries except if they're made on contact. Those you can't prevent. All the other injuries can be prevented. So where we got this notion that injuries are okay, it's just part of the game, that's hogwash. There are two reasons for this. Injuries are related to technique and the physical ability specific to that technique. In other words, you have to develop good technique. Injuries have a neuromuscular base. Many injuries are caused by improper technique. So if you fix the technique, no injuries. We should never be getting injuries from poor technique. But yet a great percentage today are caused by poor technique, even on a professional level. Keep in mind that the pros don't do any analyses. They don't do any teaching of throwing. They expect everybody to be perfect by the time they reach that level. They are not. And if we back up enough, when we take a look at technique, that means the skill execution. These are learned things. You're not born with the ability to throw a ball, or the rudiments of it maybe. But to throw well is a learned thing. You must learn how to throw well. You got to practice it over and over and over. If it's perfect technique, then you'll have very little chance of injury, if any. Because I know in my experience and athletes and coaches that are working with me, we don't hear of any injuries. We don't get any injuries, except if they're contact. So number one is correct their technique, especially in the earliest years in Little League.